Hello there. What is up, everyone? It is Wednesday, October 17th, 2018. And this is the A-Side Live Chat Podcast. My name is Shaun Al-Shatti. I hope all you guys out there are having a fantastic Wednesday. Thank you so much for spending a small part of it with us. This week feels very much like a catch your breath week, doesn't it? Especially after the crazy stretch we've just been on. Things kind of slowed down a tiny bit to recharge, but there is still so much to discuss, and we will get into all of that on today's show. But first, let me bring in my good friend here, the workhorse. And if do my eyes deceive me, or for the first time in a long, long time, is this man actually home for once? Mr. Marc Raimondi. How are things, Marc? Are you home? How does it feel? This is amazing to me.
I am home back in sunny Los Angeles, California, and it's been a long journey. I haven't been home on a Wednesday since mid-September, I think, right? About 4 weeks or so. It's I'm a little tired, I'm not gonna lie. It's been a rough few weeks. I'm a little sick. I'm on some medication right now, so we'll see how that works out for everyone. And then I'm back on the road tomorrow for a little Derek Lewis Media Day in Las Vegas. So the show must go on, and the wheel keeps on turning. So this is it. It's gonna be a little bit of a subdued Raimondi today, I think.
I was gonna say I can feel
a little messed up.
I can feel the unbridled enthusiasm just radiating off you, Marc.
There's something radiating off me. I'm not sure if it's unbridled enthusiasm.
Well, hey, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right to it. As we always say about this time, I mean, this is your guys' show. So we will talk about whatever you want us to talk about. You can ask us a question in the MMA Fighting page. That's below us. Any question that gets 3 recommendations, those will turn green and get priority. Or you could ask us a question on Twitter using the hashtags, the A-Side Chat Rappers. Ton of Twitter questions today. We will try to get to as many of those as possible. And as always, a replay of this podcast is going to be up immediately after the show on YouTube, audio-only version on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And then with that, man, let's get this going, Marc. I've had my caffeine. I'm ready to talk some MMA. I'm going to pull that enthusiasm out of you. Let's dive into some questions. And we're going to start off first on the MMA Fighting page from Hefe01, who writes, disaster averted, question mark, question mark, question mark. With Bader versus Mitrione going Bader's way the night before, would it have been disastrous if Chael had won and had a light heavyweight and a middleweight, most of his career anyway, in the finals of the heavyweight Grand Prix for Bellator? He writes, did Bellator dodge a bullet? One actual heavyweight making it to the finals? And who you got in the finals? What do you think, Marc?
No, not at all. I think that Chael Sonnen being in the finals actually would have been somewhat of a boon for Bellator because he still moves the needle. He still moves the needle, and he is still someone that people want to watch. He's a legitimate headliner for them on television. I think he's still a pay-per-view headliner. He's kind of a B-side type of guy, but he talks his way into getting these fights and getting these big ratings. So I think that him versus Bader would have actually possibly popped a bigger ratings number than what Fedor versus Bader is going to do in January in Los Angeles. So I don't put any credence into the heavyweight tournament not being as good because the light heavyweight and the middleweight went to the finals. I don't think that matters all that much because look, Bader has looked like a legitimate heavyweight throughout this tournament. He looks like a monster heavyweight. Actually, he almost looks better as a heavyweight than he does as a light heavyweight. And that's why I'm picking him to beat Fedor. I still think Bader he's certainly a top 5 light heavyweight in the world. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. He may even be a top 3 light heavyweight in the world. And then at heavyweight, he's got to be on that list now too, I think. I think he's looked so dominant. I was at Mohegan Sun on Friday night when he beat Matt Mitrione. Just ran through that guy, and that's not easy to do against a much bigger man. He was giving up about 25 pounds to Mitrione. So I have Bader beating Fedor, but I feel like if it was Bader Sonnen, Chael would talk his way into getting a good rating for that fight, for sure. So I don't think it would have been bad for Bellator at all.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to add. I want to go back to what you just said though. With Ryan Bader, the evolution of him. I agree with you. This is sort of, I think the tournament has changed maybe the way that we in the media, but also maybe the fan base looks at Ryan a little bit. But you said maybe he's a top 3 light heavyweight. I think he's definitely getting there. But when we talk about top 3 light heavyweights, right, we always go to DC, Gus, and Jones. Who you kicking out of those 3 to put him in there?
Well, we've never seen Gustafsson fight Bader, and I don't know how that fight would go. I really don't know how that fight would go. I would not be shocked if Bader beat him. I think he could be top 3.
Hey, that's a fair claim, man.
And you know what? I thought in 2015, I really thought Bader should have gotten that shot against DC. I really do. They built it up with the press conference. They had that little bit of a verbal altercation at the press conference after UFC 187. And I thought it made so much sense to do DC Bader at that point. Bader was on a winning streak. I thought it was a no-brainer, but they went Gustafsson instead against DC. I thought that was a mistake, and I don't think that at that point DC would have lost to Bader, but I think that may have actually done a better number because they were promoting the fight pretty well. But yeah, I think Bader is even better now than he was.
Yeah, I agree with you. And so just to, I guess, revisit the original question. I mean, nothing. He's asking about Chael. Nothing with Chael is disastrous, like you said. I mean, the man is a salesman through and through. He would have been able to drum up interest in any fight, no matter who. If he's fighting me or if he's fighting you, he could sell that fight to the public. I mean, that being said, I think 2 light heavyweights being in the heavyweight final, that certainly would have been a bad look for Bellator just as a whole. It would probably not a good way to reflect on their heavyweight division. But I will say overall, man, I think the way this has played out, the way this tournament has played out, has been a big win for Bellator in general. I mean, when we started, I mean, it's been going for a long time at this point. It started last November, so it's basically a year at this point. But it wasn't the most intriguing list of names when this started. Like, it was a pretty lackluster list of names. You had 4 light heavyweights in this supposed heavyweight tournament. But I will say, as we slowly whittle down to where we're at now, I think Fedor staying in and winning is a huge coup for them, especially just the way he has stayed in and the way he's moved on in this tournament. I mean, he has 2 first-round knockouts, and it's allowed Scott Coker to really do something he's excellent at, which is pedal in nostalgia, if that makes any sense. Like that Fedor mystique, he's really gone all in on that, and it works, even surprisingly, in 2018. I mean, he's auctioning off the glorious sweater of victory, or I forget the whole name of that.
Absolute victory.
There you go. Yeah. And at least, I mean, I can tell you guys, at least from the metrics on our site, I mean, you guys were on the ground in New York for those fights. But from the metrics on our site, like, there was genuine interest in Chael Fedor. Like, I was surprised how well all of the coverage for Chael Fedor did. It did extremely well, and much more so than a usual Bellator show. So I don't know if that reflects on Chael. Maybe it reflects a little bit on the nostalgia for Fedor. Maybe it's a little bit of both. But that was a big win for them. And I think, again, being able to recapture sort of that lightning in a bottle, at least a small part of it with Fedor, has been really neat, right? Like, this game is always more fun when Fedor is successful. And even in 2018, I mean, when the man is in his 40s, there's still something special about just seeing him perform. Like, there's still something that makes you hold your breath and kind of like feel like it's all over, like the Saitama Super Arena all over again. I mean, was that the impression you got being in the arena there?
Oh, yeah. It was a good crowd at Nassau Coliseum, which I just can't call NYCB Live. I just cannot call Nassau Coliseum by its new name. It's just too weird for me as growing up in Queens and going there for different events over the years. It felt like a big event. When Fedor walked out, it felt like this was a big deal. This is Fedor. The crowd was very into it. It was a nice sized crowd. Yeah, I mean, I think Bellator has some momentum, man. I really do. I think that Bellator 206 in San Jose, which I was at with Mousasi versus McDonald, that was a really good card. Had that big event feel. The Saturday night card with Chael and Fedor had a big event feel, and now they're going into this doubleheader in Hawaii in December. They have the finals of the heavyweight Grand Prix in January. They have the welterweight Grand Prix underway. That's still kind of getting itself kicked off. I think they're in good shape. I think this is the best. This is the best that Bellator has ever been, and I think that it's I think there's room for growth. I think they have momentum.
Yeah, and I will say this finals, this Bader versus Fedor final, this feels like the absolute best case scenario sort of for what this tournament could have been, right? Because when this bracket was made, I feel like this is probably the outcome that Bellator was hoping for most, because like you said, I think this tournament has gone a long way in reshaping, at least slowly, beginning to reshape the way both we in the public and in the media think about one Ryan Dwayne Bader. I mean, if you consider the way that he when he made the move to Bellator, he was on like a 7 of 8 winning streak. But that one loss, man, that Anthony Johnson loss, that seemed to really like seal sort of his ceiling in people's minds, like his fate in the grand scheme of things, if that makes any sense. And I feel like in this sport, it's really difficult to break out of that narrative people have for you once it's already set. And the narrative really was that Bader, he's a good light heavyweight. He's probably top 7 or maybe top 5, but he'll never be that world beater that maybe some people thought. But he has done nothing but dominate in Bellator, man. Like the Phil Davis one, throw that out the window. I feel like they could fight 400 times and maybe one of those will be exciting. Like their styles just don't clash well. But since then, man, he's been unstoppable. And you are right. He does not look out of place at heavyweight at all. He was at a 25-pound weight disadvantage against Matt Mitrione. And I think we would all agree that Matt Mitrione is at worst a very credible heavyweight to gauge yourself against. And that was pure dominance, man. There was no question of who was the better fighter in that fight. This matchup, this Bader versus Fedor, man. If Bader wins, that's one of your big free agent signings for Bellator. You have a man who genuinely earned the right to be called a double champ in your promotion. And also then, like you said, with the DC thing, it's a very interesting narrative then you have in contrast with DC, because those are two rivals from the past years. Like you said, they had their run-ins, and now they would be basically the two major double champs in the sport at the exact same weight classes. And they both earned their way to it. That seems to be a very fun what-if discussion to have, and I'm sure Bellator would be thrilled to just be included in that kind of discussion. And then on the other side, Fedor wins. I mean, what else do you need to be said? Fedor in 2018 being your heavyweight champion and actually having legitimately earned it with tough competition and tough wins. That's huge, man. That opens the door for all sorts of fun possibilities for Scott Coker and all those guys at Bellator to play with moving forward. Overall, I would consider, I know this is taken about a year for us to settle, but I would consider this tournament a success, wouldn't you?
100%, I agree. And let me just play a quick game with you here. Ryan, we talked about Ryan Bader standing in the light heavyweight division. Where would you put him in heavyweight? I'm looking at the UFC official contender rankings right now. This is the top 5. Cormier is the champ, obviously. Miocic is 1. Derek Lewis is 2. Curtis Blades is 3. Francis Ngannou is 4. Alexander Volkov is 5. Do you put Ryan Bader in the top 5 at heavyweight right now?
Oh, man. Okay. So let me see. I'm looking at the same list you are now. I think him being, because he weighed in around 230. So that immediately in my mind limits him to some degree, because a lot of these dudes, Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, these are guys who are basically cutting weight to get to 265. I would put him in the top 7. I would put him right above Junior Dos Santos and below Alistair Overeem. But I mean, that's crazy, because I don't think any of us really anticipated Ryan Bader being a great heavyweight. What would you put him at?
You don't think he beats Alexander Volkov?
I don't know. I think maybe that would be a 50-50 one for me. I think I'd probably favor Volkov, but I don't know.
Tough call. I don't know. But yeah, he's top 10. I don't think anyone would disagree with that, right?
No, I would definitely agree with you on that. Why are you throwing him in that top 5 at heavyweight?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm inclined to do just that. I don't know. I mean, I think he could beat Volkov. I think he could beat Ngannou, honestly. I don't think he cracks the top 3, but I think he can beat Volkov or Ngannou. I mean, it's a styles make fights. Like you said, the size thing. He is a great wrestler, so he will give a lot of guys trouble with that alone. But yeah, I mean, I can see him beating those guys.
Yeah, I mean, either way, I think just to close off this conversation, maybe we went a little long with it, but I think it's safe to say that Ryan Bader is one of the guys who you can really point to where a move to Bellator has really benefited him. I mean, he has had the opportunity to do really creative things with his career and really reinvent himself in a way that I don't think he would have been able to in the UFC. Yeah,
huge job by him to go over there. Let's move on to the MMAfighting.com comment section. DAZN making moves. This is from SJY. They just signed Canelo to 5 years, $365 million, 11-fight contract. I think it might have been a 10-fight contract. They must have their eyes on some of the top UFC talent. This is about DAZN. What do you think? They're making big moves.
Yeah, it was
terrible name, big moves.
Terrible name. I will never get over that name. But it was interesting in that article that announced that. I think there was a little nugget about UFC Fight Pass having considered being in the bidding war for Canelo. And if that's true, that's interesting.
They were not paying that much. That's for damn sure.
That's for damn sure. I would say this is it's very intriguing to me what DAZN has really done in a very quick amount of time, because 6 months ago, I had never heard of DAZN. And now all of a sudden they're all over the place. They're spending mad money, mad cash for all these big gets. And I think we were just talking about Bellator and the moves they're making. Every time DAZN makes a move like this, that's a better look for Bellator, man, because they got on this ship early, and DAZN really seems to be becoming a very, very interesting streaming service, just to say the least. I mean, Canelo is a big, big player in boxing.
Not only that, but I believe from what I hear, the Bellator 206 show with Mousasi and McDonald crushed the Anthony Joshua boxing fight on DAZN. Did way better numbers. Way better numbers.
Yeah,
so Bellator is going to be a linchpin for DAZN, actually.
Yeah, I don't know that there's much more to say about the signing, but it's very interesting, man. HBO boxing HBO getting out of boxing leaves a big hole for a lot of people to fill in that sport. And if DAZN is able to get a couple of guys like this, could be interesting moving forward.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they shape out, because this is like a brand new thing. I mean, streaming services are still kind of, as far as streaming services and live sports, this is still a very, very new deal. So it'll be curious to see how that goes. I know people are sick of paying subscription prices for this stuff, but I mean, DAZN is certainly banking on people shelling out their hard-earned dollars for their monthly fee.
Yeah. So let's move on on the MMA Fighting page. Next one's coming from us, or to us, from Louth57, who wonders, have people written off Luke Rockhold too soon? He writes, he doesn't seem to be getting the respect he did when he became champ, and a lot of people, himself included, thought he would dominate middleweight for a good time. With 2 bad knockouts, obviously his stock took a drop, but I still think he can get back to the top. Would like to hear what you guys think. So Mark, Luke Rockhold, he's about to fight Chris Weidman, probably really big fight on UFC 230. I think at this point it's the co-main event. Thoughts?
I think this is a case of what have you done for me lately? I think that in MMA, people seem to have a short-term memory, and they forget what Rockhold has done in his career. He's got some really big wins, had a really nice run at middleweight, did not have the kind of run as the champion, as our commenter said, as people expected. I mean, I think people did think that Rockhold was going to go on this run and kind of be one of the better middleweights of all time. Didn't happen, got upended by Michael Bisping, as we know, coming off now the loss to Yoel Romero, the knockout loss. And this is a really big fight for Rockhold, honestly, at UFC 230. I mean, he almost has to beat Weidman in order to stay in that conversation as one of the best middleweights. I'm just a little surprised that he's back at 185. I thought for sure
exactly.
I thought for sure that he was bound for 205, and I discussed this with him backstage at UFC 229 earlier this month, and it still seems like he wants to go to 205. This was just an opportunity to fight at MSG, to fight against Weidman, a guy that he's already beaten, and get a win back, he thinks. I mean, which is not going to be easy, of course, against Weidman, who is, on a little bit of a minor good roll right now, coming off an injury, but has a win over Gastelum. I think that Rockhold's future is still at 205, and I think that could be very interesting to see how he does in that division. He's complained a lot about weight classes, weight cutting in the past. And part of me is just like, why don't just have Rockhold and Weidman fight at 205? Like, why are we doing this at 185? It doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. I think Weidman, if he wins, he gets a title shot at 185. If Rockhold wins, I still think he wants to go to 205. So I'm just a little confused why this fight is at 185.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much to add, honestly, because that's it. It really is the 185 thing. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. The Michael Bisping loss is one thing. I feel like people can attribute that to various things. Maybe Rockhold took it lightly. Maybe there's these things kind of happen in MMA. To quote Gus Johnson, the immortal Gus Johnson.
He was injured going to that fight. His dad had just passed away going to that fight. I mean, there were a lot of things about Rockhold going to that fight.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where if they play it over 10 times, I'm sure we don't get that result most of the times. The Yoel Romero one is another one where, I mean, Yoel Romero's a killer. I'm not going to take a loss to him. Is nothing to get down on, I would say. I mean, he's freaking Yoel Romero. Even at 40 years old, he can do devastating things to you. But I agree with you, man. I thought the move was to move to 205. I kind of don't even like this Weidman fight. Like, it's a cool fight. It's a great fight. I mean, I enjoyed it the first time. Both these guys are world-class fighters, so obviously it'll be interesting. But I don't like this matchup at 185. It feels strange, and also it just feels like what happens. Like, what's it do for either guy, right? Like, I know Chris Weidman, it does something for him because he's trying to make it back to the title at 185. A win over Luke Rockhold's a big win. If Luke wins, though, where does that put him in the division? He's not in this title picture right now, really. And like you said, the door is open for 205. Let him go to 205 and let him try his value there, man, because he's a giant man. He is a giant person who has cut weight for this division for a long time. And I think this is one of those situations where at a certain point, your body just is not down to deal with these weight cuts anymore. And I would love to see him fight closer to his natural weight at 205. And I think that's kind of what a lot of people are waiting on for him at this point, when, this question's about the story behind Luke Rockhold and people, not being as high on him as they once were. I think a lot of people are just waiting for that next chapter of his career. And this feels like this is almost delaying it in a sense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, look at 205 right now. DC is retiring next year, so he's gone. Jon Jones is fighting Alexander Gustafsson for the light heavyweight title in December. So that's the title fight. Who is next after that fight? If it's not going to be DC, if he is actually going to retire, who is next? Number 2 is Volkan Oezdemir, who we've seen, DC dominated him in that fight. Number 3 is Jan Blachowicz. Are you telling me Luke Rockhold would not be at least a top 5, if not better, light heavyweight? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And the fact that Jan Blachowicz, no offense to him, but he's number 3 in the world at light heavyweight, that speaks volumes, right?
I mean, Luke Rockhold couldn't beat Jan Blachowicz. I mean, I don't know how that fight goes, but certainly he could beat him. He could probably beat Volkan Oezdemir. He can beat Jimmy Mano. I mean, those are competitive fights, but Rockhold could certainly win those fights.
I mean, I believe Luke and Rockhold, Jesus Christ, I'm with you today. I'm out of it. I believe Luke and Volkan had trained together too. So, I mean,
that's true. They probably won't fight each other.
They probably won't fight each other, but it's not like Luke isn't used to going against bigger guys. I mean, he used to train with DC and Kane all the time. Like, this is a man who can do this.
Yeah, I think that he should be a 205, like, right now. I mean, he should be fighting like in a title eliminator at 205 right now. I think Latifi is fighting Corey Anderson on that December card as kind of a backup for Jones and Gus. But yeah, I mean, Rockhold is right there. How about Dominic Reyes coming up that list? That guy is fucking good.
There you go, man. Dominic Reyes, Anthony Smith. Like, there's some killers coming up now. There's some new blood coming into that division.
Absolutely. Let's move on now. Back to the comments. Issues of weight cutting and more weight classes. This is from D Iceman 19. Michael Chiesa talked about walking around 205 pounds on the past MMA hour. Bringing a 155-pound division or creating more divisions won't take away the problems of weight cutting, in my opinion. I think it may be down to discipline and honesty on the part of the athletes to fight close to their natural weights. Do you think that the solution to weight cutting is more weight classes, or what do you have in mind about how to rectify that? Keep the fire burning on the A side. Yeah.
With double heart face. I like that. Thank you so much for that. So, I mean, in general, I don't think Michael Chiesa's situation is representative of the conversation about 165 as a whole, because I feel like for him, the move to welterweight was long overdue. I mean, this is something he's talked about for a while now, a couple of years, about how he almost felt stuck at lightweight because he had made so much progress. And in a division that deep, once you make that progress, the idea of resetting completely is very daunting, and it just feels like you just wasted your time in that regard. So I don't know that Chiesa's situation is representative of the whole conversation as a whole. But in general, man, I mean, we've talked about this at length on this show, so I won't reiterate myself too much, but there is so much damn talent at 155 and 170. Overwhelmingly more talent in those two divisions than any other divisions in the sport. The bell curve is very much like this for that division. And even just with the amount of fighters rostered in the UFC, those divisions both have about 80 or 90 fighters rostered in the UFC, whereas other divisions, most of them have about 30, 40, maybe 50. So it's there. The opportunity is there. I think the issue mainly is there's just not enough shows for another division like that. So if you're gonna want to do 165 and 175, you got to take away a division. That kind of seems like to be the situation that we're at. And so I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know that there's a solution for weight cutting. I don't think that bringing 165 in solves weight cutting by any means. Weight cutting's always been around. Unless there is just a complete overhaul of the system, maybe in the way that ONE FC did. And there's a question, the follow-up question on the site is asking about that. Maybe something like that would work. California, the State Athletic Commission, has certainly gone to specific lengths to try to make it more stringent and more regulated in terms of doing weight checks, and fighters can only cut a certain amount. Those are always improvements. I don't know that there's a way to stop weight cutting entirely unless you just make guys not be able to cut weight entirely, which will never happen. But 165 is certainly a good first step just for these dudes at 155 who are killing themselves to get to 155 because the guys at 170 are basically 200 pounds and they're just not that big.
I don't think that new weight classes is going to solve weight cutting. I don't think that is true. And I think that we've talked about this multiple times in the past, that just adding weight classes is not going to solve the problem. However, like you said, Shaun, there are so many fighters in that range between 170 and 155. And just, I mean, human males are just in that range. As far, if they're going to cut a few pounds, you're going to be in that range between 155 and 170. And I think that more than any other weight class, 165 would be a welcome addition to the UFC. Now, let's remember, the ABC has already approved this, so this weight class does exist in the world, in North America. The UFC can do it at any time they want. It is a real weight class. It's a matter of the promoters installing that. And I think that it would be that weight class again is I think the main one. The other ones are secondary to me, but I think that there are so many people going between 170 and 155. They're just that glut of talent, and I think there's a lot of guys cutting to 155. I'm kind of meandering a little bit right now, but the whole ONE championship thing is curious to me, because basically when ONE installed this new system, they had literally everyone move up in weight. Literally their entire roster was like, all right, you're a welterweight, now you're a middleweight. You're a strawweight, okay, now you're a flyweight. Everyone moved up. And man, I would love that in the UFC. I would love if they just moved everyone up one weight class. That would be that. It'll never happen, but I would love that idea. And then the other thing about ONE is that they test them throughout the week for hydration to make sure they're not dehydrating themselves throughout the week, which, look, if you go to any official weigh-in in the UFC and Bellator and PFL, et cetera, you're seeing dehydrated fighters get on the scale. There's no doubt. Just about every single one of them is dehydrated in some form or another. So I like the idea that ONE has. It's so hard to say how well it's working because we're just not on the ground for these ONE championship shows in Asia. So we don't really know firsthand to see how it works. I would love to go there one day and like follow that process throughout fight week to see how they do that. But and also like they regulate themselves, which is kind of a weird thing too. So I don't know if that is fully the answer. But to get back to the question, I mean, I don't know, man. I think that it would be nice to have new weight classes, but you also need to have new rules to go along with that. Otherwise, people are just going to cut to those weight classes from above. It's not going to solve the problem fully.
Yeah. Well, let's stay on the ONE train. And actually, they just had some big news this week. The next question is coming from Dizzy Dorf on the MMA Fighting webpage, loyal listener, who writes, Eddie Alvarez. And this is a big one, Marc. Thoughts on the Eddie Alvarez signing with ONE championship? He writes, I would have rather he stayed in the UFC or go to Bellator. So, Marc, I mean, Eddie Alvarez, this is probably the biggest signing for ONE championship.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Askren, maybe the biggest signing for them ever. I don't know if this is bigger than Ben. What are your thoughts generally on the signing? Are you? I guess to address the question first, would you rather he went somewhere else?
It's by far the biggest signing in ONE history. It's bigger than Ben Askren because Eddie Alvarez is a former UFC champion. Eddie Alvarez headlined Madison Square Garden. It's a bigger signing than Ben Askren. All respect to Ben Askren, who I still think is one of the best welterweights in the world. It's bigger than that in terms of star power. Yeah, I mean, look, I understand fans wanting to see their favorite fighters go up against the ranked contenders in the UFC and in Bellator. I know a ton of people, myself included, would have loved to have seen Alvarez Chandler 3, and I still hope one day we'll see it because those are two of my favorite fights of all time. But if you're an Eddie Alvarez fan, you want to see Eddie Alvarez feed his family and make as much money as he possibly can. And essentially, that's what happened. He took the best possible offer. And that's really, I mean, this is prize fighting. These guys are doing it to make a living, to make money on it. And if one is going to give you X amount of dollars more than what the UFC and Bellator were going to give you, you go to one. It doesn't matter. Also, Eddie Alvarez has done it all. He's already done everything. He's accomplished everything. He's been a UFC champion. He's fought all over the world. He's won belts everywhere. He's been in some of the best fights of all time. I mean, the guy could retire right now and have had a borderline UFC Hall of Fame career if they take into account all the other stuff that he did in Bellator and in Dream, et cetera, et cetera. So kudos to Eddie Alvarez, in my opinion. I get where fans are coming from, but so go watch him in one. I'm sure they're going to put together some interesting fights for him. I'm sure he still has, some cool, exciting fights left. And I mean, they fight in rings sometimes. They have they have different rules. So it'll be cool to see Alvarez out there in Asia again.
Yeah, again, the last word, that's the key, right? Again, because this is sort of, it's nice. It's almost cool in a way that this is kind of coming full circle for Eddie, because he's called the Underground King for a reason. There was like the whole first half of his career, he was basically fighting in places far, far away against absolute killers that maybe most people didn't know. And he was really the hardcore fan, or the hardcore fighter. I will say I'm disappointed to some degree, just selfishly. Like you, I was hoping he would go to Bellator. That was kind of where I was pinning my hopes on, just so we could see the epic conclusion to that Chandler rivalry. I love those fights. I would love to see a third one. I think now would have been the perfect time for that. That could have been such a big event for Bellator and Scott Coker and the way they could have approached the promotion to it. But ultimately, I'm like you, man. I support his decision. And I want to point out that Eddie Alvarez was the number 4 lightweight in the UFC when he left. And we need to remember that, because I'm sure it'll get washed away within the next 6 months when people talk about, Conor and Poirier and try to imply that Eddie couldn't cut it in the octagon and all this crap that always happens whenever people leave. People whitewash that stuff real quick. He was the number 4. He was a top 5 lightweight in the world, in the toughest division in the entire world. That's not going to change just because he's fighting elsewhere. But I will say,
still an elite fighter.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. But this will be the likely, I can't predict the future, but it seems like this will be the last big contract of Alvarez's career. I mean, he's 34 years old. He's going on year 16 of a career where he's been in more wars than any other prominent fighter out there that I can think of. Just in terms of pure dogfight wars. Like he has made his name on that. And he even had some of them in the UFC wars from way back, from before, most fans even knew who he was. So this almost feels like really the most fitting way for him to end his career. He was the belt collector before he even became a UFC champion. That's what he was. That's what he did. And he would go to your favorite regional promotion and beat that champion. And now he's just going to keep doing that, right? Like UFC and Bellator titles, but dating all the way back, he fucking fought for the WAMA title, for God's sake, man. Like he was supposed to challenge for the Dream title until he got injured. Bodog fight.
Bodog, baby.
Bodog fight, man. Reality fighting. Like this is what his career is all about. It's almost like all these little like snapshots from different times and places in the sport's history. It's almost like a very cool timeline of the history of that division. Just if you look at his Wikipedia page and kind of look at his travels. And like I said, man, so like I support this ultimately because it seems like he only has a few good years left. It seems like he got paid really well. I mean, just from the way he's talking about it, it seems to be he is really happy with what he got. So good for you, man. Like, go get that money. Go get that last belt to put in the trophy case. Alvarez versus Martin Wynn, who's the lightweight champ over there. Sure, sign me up. Like, I'll watch that. Martin Wynn's entertaining guy. Alvarez is versus a fun, like, risk-taking striker like Edward Fulyaong. Like, sure, I'll watch that. The Aoki trilogy, I never thought we would actually get that, but sure. Why not, man? Like, in a game that's this selfish and as unforgiving as this one, I will never, ever fault a man for getting them checks. And I would rather see Alvarez ride off into the sunset, successful and making money and winning rather than being fed to the wolves and used as sort of like a ritualistic sacrifice for all the young blood at 155 that would be coming up in the next couple of years, like he would inevitably have happen to him in the UFC had he stayed around long enough.
Yeah, and I think 2019 could end up being a pretty big year for 1-2 with some of the other moves they made, and Alvarez coming in. Angela Lee is a big star, so it'll be interesting to see another promotion also kind of make some moves with Bellator making some moves as well. PFL. Let's move on now to
hold on really quickly.
Yeah.
One last thing to top this conversation up. I'm curious for your opinion because I was thinking about this morning. I don't know that I have an answer, but I would like to come up with an answer. Like, where do you put Eddie Alvarez? Where does he stand in the pantheon right now of all-time lightweights?
Wow, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think
is he top 3? Is he top 5? Where do you go?
I would say top 10, definitely top 10. I would have to take a deeper look at the list.
You don't go automatic top 5 because in my mind I feel like he's probably like 5 or 4.
I could see him being in the top 5. I would be more comfortable saying top 7 again, just off the top of my head, without actually looking at the list. Because I mean, who would you have? Who would you have as the top lightweights ever?
Okay, so
also because like it's very in flux because you have Khabib Nurmagomedov, who,
well, yeah,
he's 27-0 and he's not like an all-time great yet, but he kind of is. It's still very current. It's current. It's very current though,
But he kind of is. Like in my mind,
yeah.
Khabib versus Ferguson, in my mind, just because how successful they've been in this division, the winner of that fight's maybe the lightweight GOAT. And that's weird to say but that's really a reflection on how young this sport is, and especially that division that's only been around for in mainstream prominence for a decade or so. But I think the winner of that fight's probably the lightweight GOAT. And then you got to throw in BJ Penn. Maybe you could go back to Rafael dos Anjos and maybe Benson Henderson. But like, I don't know, man. I feel like Eddie is top 5 lightweight all time already.
I still feel like BJ Penn is the best 155er of all time because of that run that he had there as champ.
I agree with you.
I still think I mean it's that probably won't stay for very long, if you know what I mean, because I think Khabib is probably on that list, but it's been a hard division to have a sustained run in, and Khabib is doing that. And Ferguson is doing that right now. So I think those guys, like you said, are up there. But BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar. I mean, if you want to, Frankie Edgar had a really good run, which is just crazy because of his size. If you want to go back to older fighters from different areas, Takanori Gomi was really great at 55 for a while.
It's weird, man.
Gilbert Melendez and Strikeforce. I mean, it's weird. Benson Henderson.
I feel like lightweight is the hardest division to have this conversation about because
it is.
There literally has never been a run of sustained success on like a world-class level from anybody ever. Like, I think the record for most title defenses in that division is like 2 or 3. Like, it's just not a division where you can continually keep running guys out because of how deep it is. So it's a very bizarre conversation to have just because, like, again, I don't know that there's an actual answer other than like the default of BJ Penn. And then you just have like a muddled group right underneath it. But in my mind, Eddie is definitely in that group.
He's in there. I mean, I could definitely see him being top 5, definitely top 7. It's a really tough list because it's very subjective. It's very subjective.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Next up, coming from the MMA Fighting page, from Vegetable Police. All right, I like that. What is the most exciting fight for Anderson Silva right now? What do you think, Marc?
Conor McGregor.
Jesus Christ.
Conor.
Seriously?
Conor McGregor.
No,
you're saying what's exciting? That's exciting.
No,
is that not exciting?
No, it's not.
Why is it not exciting?
Anderson Silva's a massive man. That's just not even.
It's exciting though.
Is that your real answer?
Yeah. Why not? What's the problem? What's the problem, Shaun?
Okay, I could not disagree with you more. I hate this whole Conor McGregor versus Anderson Silva discussion. I'm not even going to address it really because it is very silly. They are very different size fighters. It's
that's not exciting? What is it? He didn't say what the best fight is for Silva. He said what's the most exciting. So what is the most exciting fight for Anderson Silva right now?
The correct answer is Israel Adesanya. That is the right answer.
Okay, I like that.
That it is an incredibly fun stylistic matchup. I feel like Anderson has his most fun, just most memorable fights with really talented strikers. And Izzy, the way he like looks and approaches the game, you know, you've been in the room with him. I mean, he's so charismatic, the way he can kind of hold court and just talk and riff about stuff. I know for a fact he would relish that fight and that moment. It would, in the lead up, and it would be something special for him. So the lead up to it would be very entertaining and engaging. But also, man, that's the only one in the top 10 that I even want to see at this point, because I just don't want to see Anderson fight contenders anymore. Like, this story is only going downhill, and I just don't want to watch that, honestly.
Well, that's why I said Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor.
All right, let's move on.
How about Anderson Silva versus Paulo the Eraser Costa?
See, like that, I don't want to see that. I feel like that could be very bad for Anderson, and maybe it won't. Who knows? But I just don't want to see Anderson get super sparked out at age 40. Like, it's just not something appealing to me.
I'd be down to see Anderson go up to 205 and fight like Shogun.
That I didn't think of that. That'd be good. But put him on the Legends circuit, like that type of thing. That seems very cool to me.
Vitor Belfort's Legends League TM.
The UFC would never let him go, but if Anderson Silva went to Bellator and was able to do a Legends circuit, like that would be really cool to see.
Silva versus Sonnen 3.
Silva versus Fedor.
I mean, sign me up. Sign me up.
That's the kind of fights we need to be talking about.
I'm there. I am so there.
All right, what's next, Mark?
All right, from the comments on MMA Fighting. From Sped Ed Pen E. Just wondering, when are we going to be able to get one of those MMA Fighting shirts you guys rock? You mean this shirt, Sped Ed Pen E? Well, that's a good question. Right now, they're not on sale to the general public. But maybe one day, if you guys ask our bosses enough, we can maybe make that happen. Well, let's try to get this show on iTunes first before we start selling shirts.
But that's what it is. We need the public demand, right? Because like I've been asking our boss forever about that. Because
you guys have a voice.
People always ask us, and it's just like until the public demand is enough. Once it's enough, I feel like they'll put it out there. But I will say those shirts are very, very comfy. They're very
nice shirts. They're my usual official weigh-in shirts because it's the morning. I don't want to iron a button-down shirt, so I just throw on my MMA Fighting t-shirt. But I didn't wear it. I didn't wear it on Friday because we had to go to the official weigh-ins at Bellator in Long Island. Then that's at 9 a.m. Then we had to go to the ceremonial weigh-ins, which was in the same place at 11 a.m. on Long Island. Then after the ceremonial weigh-ins, we took a bus 4 hours to Mohegan Sun, covered that show, press conference, drove back to Long Island at about 1 a.m. and arrived at about 4:30 a.m. That was our day on Friday.
I don't know that anybody feels bad for you.
All 21-hour workday.
Those shirts.
You can feel bad or you don't. I mean, I'm just saying.
I will say those shirts are my open workout shirts. I love wearing those for open workouts.
Open workout shirts. We have to just make sure that we don't wear them on the same day. That's weird.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is I can't wear it when you're wearing it. So it's a nice week starter for me on fight weeks.
I feel like you, me, Esther, and Casey have like different days of the fight week that we wear the shirts, so we don't conflict with each other. Anyway, no one cares about this. From the MMA Fighting comments, Gauze and Tape asking Khabib's plans and negotiations. You okay, brother?
Oh God,
you're dying over there.
I'm very sick, and I'm just trying to not appear sick.
I thought I was sicker than you. Maybe not.
I think we're probably equal levels. All right, keep going. Sorry.
I need some more drugs. Khabib's plans and negotiations. Twitter user @ThePeoplesMMA posted a link to a Russian language article / interview and summarized Khabib's actions and intentions. Basically, this is the report that Khabib turned down $15 million. He plans to fight Ferguson next and then retire. Has received offers from Bellator, Akhmat, and Fight Night. won't fight for less than $5 million. If he leaves the UFC, 8 other powerful fighters will leave. Assuming the synopsis posted on Twitter is accurate, what do you make of Khabib's statements? I just want to add one thing before I throw it to you, Shaun. Khabib can't get offers from other places. He's under contract with the UFC. That would be tampering. Now, maybe they're behind the scenes talking to him, but he's not going anywhere. He's going to be in the UFC. No doubt about it.
Yeah, that was going to be the first thing I said. No, Bellator is not out here offering Khabib a contract because they can't. They literally can't.
It's effing illegal, as Dana White would say.
So all of these, it's hard to speak on this because we have no way to corroborate this, and this is all just kind of hearsay from a random person. I will say though, it's almost like never mind. I'm all over the place. But I will say nobody turned down anything for a rematch. Nothing has even been figured out yet. There's the UFC and Khabib and Conor and all of them are still dealing with the aftermath of all the craziness we saw 2 weeks ago in Las Vegas. And they're not even beginning to have that conversation yet about what's next.
Also, how can you say he's going to fight Ferguson in April or May when we don't even know how long Khabib is going to be suspended? He's going to be suspended.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. All of this is just hearsay, and none of it is actually based on anything factual. So it's hard to go out on a limb other than that. Also, the 8 other powerful fighters will leave. Like, what does that even mean? But
they can't leave. They can't go anywhere. They're under contract. They're exclusive contracts.
But I would like to have a conversation about what's next for Khabib. So for that, let's go to the next question.
Yeah.
And that comes from Punches Please. I like that username, who writes, Nurmagomedov versus Ferguson. First off, I would like to say that you guys have done that. I like what you guys have done with the show. It's refreshing to get different perspectives on all things MMA. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Khabib and Tony both had tremendous showings in their last bouts and seem to be on a collision course. I have 2 questions. Whose 11-fight win streak do you find more impressive? And if this fight doesn't happen, will it be the most important MMA fight to never take place? So, Mark, let's start with the first part of that question. Whose 11-fight win streak do you find more impressive? Because I think we both agree, right? Like, we're both of the mind that needs to be the fight that happens.
I mean, that's the one that makes the most sense next. I still think you're gonna kill me. I still think that the McGregor Nurmagomedov rematch has to happen, but I think it may happen after Khabib versus Ferguson. I think McGregor will take some time off. I think that if Khabib is able to get by Ferguson, they run back that rematch sometime late next year, something like that. Because I mean, I've never ever seen a buzz after a fight like this. I've never seen it. It's like the fight was yesterday. There's still so much buzz about that fight and all of the shenanigans after the fight. I've never seen that before, Shaun. I mean, I've been doing this for a little bit. You know, you've been doing this for a while. I've never seen the kind of mainstream attention that this story is still getting. So I think that it would be, I mean, that would be by far the biggest fight in UFC history. And I can't imagine WME, IMG, Endeavor, whatever you want to call them, leaving that money on the table. I think they will have to do a rematch. But I think that Khabib versus Ferguson should come first. If Khabib wins, then you do that. I mean, even if Khabib loses, I think you do the rematch with Conor at some point next year. But as far as what winning streak is more impressive,
so let me jump in. I'm gonna list off the important names on the winning streaks, okay? And then let's have this discussion. So Tony Ferguson's goes back all the way back from 2013. That was the start of it. It starts with Mike Rio, and then we go Katsunori Kikunu. I can never say that. I've always been able to not say that. Danny Castillo, Abel Trujillo, Gleason Tebow, Josh Thompson, Edson Barboza, Lando Venata, RDA, Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis. That's pretty damn impressive.
Not bad.
Now, Khabib starts in 2012, so a year earlier, although he also has had more breaks than Tony Ferguson. He starts with Kamal Shaloris, WEC great Kamal Shaloris. Then he gets Gleason Tebow as well, Thiago Tavares, Abel Trujillo, Pat Healy, RDA, Daryl Horcher, Michael Johnson, Edson Barboza, Al Iaquinta, Conor McGregor. So there are a couple mutual opponents there. They both have RDA. I think they both have Gleason Tebow.
Yep.
Abel Trujillo. But there are a couple. They both have Michael Johnson. Oh, no. Tony didn't beat Michael Johnson. My bad.
He lost, yeah.
but they both have Edson Barbosa. So there are a couple mutually exclusive people, or I can't speak at this point. There are a couple of guys they both have, but for the most part, who do you think?
It's tough. It's real tough. But I think, okay, so the full body of work, I would say Ferguson. The full body of work. But because Khabib did beat McGregor, I have to go with Khabib as the toughest strength of schedule, because he did beat the guy who was the lineal champion, the guy that beat Alvarez, who knocked him out pretty easily, who was the featherweight champion, who say what you will about McGregor as an entertainer, but he's still a great fighter. And I think that's a more impressive win than, say, Anthony Pettis. I think McGregor is better than Pettis and better than anyone that Ferguson beat, right? So I would say Khabib, but it's very close. If you want to say the whole gamut, Ferguson, but I would say that because Khabib has the win over McGregor, that puts him just slightly ahead.
So I would say, so I'm going to break this
also,
down.
By the way, a dominant win over McGregor, a finish.
I think that's an important part, and I want to add that to what I'm about to say. So I would say that the top 4 wins in Khabib's resume right now in that streak: Conor, Edson Barboza, RDA, Michael Johnson. I feel like those are like the best 4, right? Where you look at Tony Ferguson's best 4 are probably Kevin Lee, RDA, Edson Barboza, Anthony Pettis. Yeah, I would say Pettis.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think also the way in which these streaks have sort of been enacted, right? Like Khabib's has been pure domination. He lost 1 round, and that was the 3rd round against Conor, and that was maybe a round where he kind of took it off. It wasn't like Conor did anything significant in that round. Tony's been in wars, man. Tony has lost a lot of rounds to a lot of people, but he always comes through in the end. But he has been in absolute wars with all these people. He always ends up bloody in some fashion. I think that matters. And I agree with you. I think the best win out of all of those wins from both of them is dominating Conor McGregor on the stage that Khabib did, with all the pressure, all the lights, biggest fight in UFC history, all the bullshit that came with it. That feels like the best win of the whole streak. So I would say, you know me, I'm the biggest Tony Ferguson mark in the world. I think he's the better fighter, but I think at this moment, Khabib has the better streak.
You think he's a better fighter than Khabib?
I've long said that, man. This is not surprising. I think you would win that fight.
Wow.
But let's address the second part of this question. If that fight doesn't happen, is that the best fight we never saw? Is that like the biggest disgrace that fight never happened in MMA history?
It has to happen. It can't not happen.
It has to.
It has to happen. I mean, yes. I mean, there have been bigger fights that never happened, like Fedor versus Randy Couture, something like that. Which
Fedor Brock Lesnar or something like that.
Yeah, right, exactly. Fedor versus Brock Lesnar, like bigger money fight that never happened. But as far as two guys who have almost cleaned out a division, 2 of them on similar paths, similar winning streaks. I mean, yeah, it would be a travesty if that fight didn't happen. It would be heartbreaking if that fight didn't happen.
Yeah, because when you look down the long line of MMA history of fights that didn't happen, that needed to happen, and we wanted them, things like GSP Silva, and you go on down the line, a lot of those are either super fights or fun fights or fights that would be really cool, but maybe don't have much in the way of really like dramatic historical stakes for an entire division. I already said earlier, I feel like this fight is basically the fight to define the legacy of lightweight. Like, these 2 guys are the 2 dominant lightweights of this time, of this current era. They need to fight, man. They need to fight. It is a fight for historical importance in this division. And this is one of the best divisions in the sport, if not the best. It would be an absolute travesty if it doesn't happen.
I agree. And like I said, I hope that fight happens next. I hope that is the fight that happens sometime early to mid next year, and then McGregor can just wait in the wings for the winner. And I know people are going to say, does he deserve a title shot? I mean, not really, but the fight would do so well financially. It would just be, to quote our predecessor on the live chat, it would be promotional malpractice, especially if it's Khabib McGregor too. I mean, they have to do that fight. They just have to do it. I know he doesn't deserve it. I know that it was a one-sided performance. I don't know if it would be any different the second time around, but enough people will believe that it will be different a second time around to not do it. And again, the mainstream attention that this fight has gotten, we're more than a week after the fight. We're like 10 days from the fight, And this is still the biggest story in MMA. I mean, I've never seen that before. So it'll happen, I think. But we need Khabib Ferguson next. We need it. We need it.
I agree. What's next?
From the MMA Fighting comments, and I don't know if I have a good answer for this one, but it's from Zaku Kogeki. Interviews. Do you guys have any good or bad stories about interviewing fighters?
Huh. Okay. I didn't look ahead on this one, so I wasn't prepared or anything.
It's a hard one.
I mean, I have lots of good experiences interviewing fighters. Like coming from, I started my media game in basketball. So coming from basketball into this, it is such a different world in MMA when it comes to just speaking to professional athletes in those type of big sports where basketball, football, whatever. The athletes just don't give you anything. Athletes aren't trying to talk to you. Nobody cares. Like it's just very plain answers. Whereas MMA, some of these, like we always talk about, like most of these guys have second jobs. Most of these guys don't make a ton of money. And so they're not just this ultra wealthy, crazy rich, living in a different world entirely type of athlete. And so they're very grounded in reality, and they're very nice and very just open and willing to actually have conversations. So I'd say a lot of my best interviews have come on the long form features that I've done, where I've kind of like examined the night we faced, like with the Aldo one or the Nate Diaz one from the artwork right behind me. Like those type of interviews are always fascinating to me, because sometimes they'll just be an hour of guys being willing to talk about losses and what they saw in the fight. And that's always the most interesting thing to me, is like what they actually saw in the fight, and like the technical aspects of just like how a certain person moves, or how a certain person throws something, or how something surprised them, or maybe just things that the people were saying to them in the cage, things like that. So that's probably been my best experiences with a fight, with a fighter interview. I don't have a lot of bad experiences. I could probably count them on one hand. Thiago Silva was probably my worst one. I think I've interviewed him twice, and he hung up on me twice.
Were you asking me about domestic violence?
Well, yeah, it was like right after all that stuff happened, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to talk about Thiago Silva?" And it's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll talk to him." He doesn't want to talk about any of that. Okay, I'm gonna probably ask him about some of that, because that's literally the whole story. Like, I'll try to be nice about it, I guess. And yeah, he's hung up on me twice. The ones that are always tough is people like an Andre Arlovski, who has like a super thick accent. So like in person, you can understand what he's saying because you're seeing his mouth and you can kind of figure it out. Over the phone, it's effing impossible. So those are probably some of the examples for me.
My best and worst experiences were probably, I mean, the one that comes to mind is the two of them are with the same fighter. It's Chael Sonnen. I had an interview with Chael before his fight with Ortiz on Fight Week, January, I guess, 2017, and he walked off the interview. It was an on-camera interview, and I'm not good at that. That's not what I do. I'm not really an on-camera interview. Both of us are kind of getting some reps now doing on-camera interviews, but it was an on-camera interview, and I just did not read the situation well, and I was pushing questions that he didn't really want to talk about, and he was probably grumpy from the weight cut, and he walked off, and it was completely my fault. I just wasn't good. I just did not read the situation. You remember this?
What was it like? Was it like a work partly? Like he was kind of in character, or was he actually like?
Oh no, I don't think it was a work. See, I think that at the moment I thought it was, but it wasn't. It was not a work. It was not. He was legitimately pissed about my line of questioning because it was about something not to do with the fight and whatever. But it was completely my fault. And to Chael's credit, like 10 minutes later, he called me and said, "Hey, I apologize. I'm, just it's fight week, whatever." So no ill will there. I mean, literally 10 minutes later, he called me. But then one of the best interviews I've ever done is the on-camera interview with Chael from last week before the Fedor fight, where he just went absolutely off on the fans who were saying Conor McGregor threw the first punch, and that is what kind of started the craziness that happened at UFC 229. That was one of my favorite on-camera type interviews that I've done. So it's kind of funny that I've come full circle with Chael a little bit.
Yeah, I will say I've talked to Chael for two different long forms in terms of the night we faced. One was the Anderson Silva one, where obviously he's a big part of Anderson Silva's story, and the other one was one that never got released that maybe will get released next year because I got screwed at the last second with some crap. But he's amazing in that setting, man. If you ask him a question about anything, no matter how personal it would be or how hard that loss would be, he'll just go off on a riff for like 10 minutes, and he's amazing in that respect. So
yeah, you can. I mean, Chael interviews can be, again, the best, and they can be the worst if I'm green and not understanding the situation. But Chael has always been great. He's always been so nice to me and to most people. So I love talking to the guy, and he's fascinating. He's a very complex individual. He's very complex. Not all the time what people think of him who are on the outside.
Yeah. All right, man. We got a ton of Twitter questions. Let's try to hit as many of them as we can over the next half hour. You want to go first, or do you have one in mind, or I'll start looking?
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw one out at you. Why not? From DJ from the Twitter machine. Do UFC rankings need recalibration? Currently based on MMA math, but should it be centered around champ? Example, JJ is #1 strawweight, but lost twice to Rose. So it could be ranked, say, 5th based on number of wins needed to get next title shot. Thoughts?
Wait, I don't know that I understood the concept of their change.
Basically what DJ is saying is that when Joanna has already lost twice to Rose, right? But she's still #1. She's still #1 in the rankings.
Oh, okay.
So that really makes sense because she's not one win away from a title shot necessarily. I mean, not against Rose anyway.
So they're proposing to have the rankings basically reflect how far away someone is from the title as opposed to how good they are in the division. That's not rankings. I don't know. That's
right.
What rankings are. Like, if you're Joanna, you're still the #1 person in the division. You just kind of have to work around it. But to answer the question, the UFC rankings have long needed to be retooled. I mean, I don't think that's a secret. I'm not breaking any news or firing off any hot takes here. They're pretty terrible. Like, and they're terrible not because of the UFC, but just because of who the UFC is using to create them. It is, at this point, I don't know how many media members are still involved with it, but I think it's maybe like 10, 15. Like, it's a very small group, and almost none of them are people you or I or the general MMA public would know in terms of like actual media figures, because I'm not part of it. You're not part of it, because I'm not going to dictate these guys' salaries. And I know we both know the UFC uses these rankings to dictate people's salaries in contract negotiations. That's not any part for me to play. And also, the UFC is very flippant with their rankings, where they'll just pull out Nate Diaz if they want to, or various things like that. And I'm just not part of that. So the people that are doing it are just very not ingrained MMA media, and it shows. I mean, I think you could go through, if you really want to take the time, and pull out just some really dreadful examples of people being ranked, favoritism, things like that. Maybe a countryman ranking his own countryman really high. So I don't know that there is I don't know what a better alternative would be other than an interior UFC rankings designed by the matchmakers that we would be able to see. That feels like that would be really cool, actually, it would be interesting to see, Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby do their own rankings and put it out for the public. That would definitely fire up some discussion. I'm sure that's something they will never do. They would never, ever, 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 ever do. And so the only other system that I think would work would be something that I've kind of wanted to do for a long time, which would be a actual media system, but an actual media rankings, but that would be separate from the UFC, right? Where they couldn't like manipulate it. So like us
and not just UFC fighters.
Yeah, and not just, exactly, like a global ranking system, us and MMA Junkie and ESPN and whoever else wants to get on it. That would be cool, but it's pretty difficult to put together.
It is, and yeah, as soon as the UFC started to yank people out of the rankings all willy-nilly, I was like, I don't really want to be a part of this, because if they're the ones deciding who you can rank, that is an inherent conflict right there. So it definitely needs some kind of revamping, but it just is. It really, I mean, that's really the best way to say it. It really has no function other than, all right, here's a general idea of how these guys and ladies shape up, because Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby are not looking at that all that much. I mean, I think they have their own internal stuff, like you said, internal data that they look at. And if they were, and as DJ was suggesting, if they were to format it the way like, well, Joanna needs X amount of wins to get a title shot, it's just impossible to do because things are always so fluid. You just don't know. I mean, Colby Covington should have gotten the title shot at welterweight. He would be, right there, but you slide in Darren Till. So everything is so fluid. There are injuries. Like it would be impossible to format it as such. I don't know what the right answer is, but that probably could not happen.
Also, I mean, with that system that's being proposed, right, where it's like she needs 4 wins, that's pretty vague. Wins means a different thing in this sport, where maybe a first round knockout is significantly more important than like a very boring decision, right? If she gets 2 first round knockouts, maybe she's back in it. Whereas 4 decisions, like you can't really. That's not something that's very concrete. It's like you said, it's a very fluid game.
You can't account for someone losing the entire fight, knocking out old boy in the 3rd round, then cutting an absolutely incredible promo about his balls being hot and then getting a title shot. I mean, you can't account for that because that is worth my balls was hot is worth like 3 UFC wins in the heavyweight division, I think. Because my balls was hot. That's what is the scale there? That I don't know, but it's worth a hell of a lot.
All right. Well, hey, next up coming on Twitter from Spark Feline, who says he's playing some Warframe. I'm gonna guess that's Warframe. And
I don't know what that is.
I don't know. Some game, I'm sure. I hope it's good. And thinking that if Stylebender, Israel Adesanya, or Daniel Cormier will be named Fighter of the Year, predictions for Fighter of the Year. This is an interesting conversation and one I just recently started having with somebody else. If DC wins against Derek Lewis at UFC 230, he feels like the Fighter of the Year, right? He defended the light heavyweight title, captured the heavyweight title, and then defended the heavyweight title. The only champ to ever defend a belt like that. Like he feels like the rightful Fighter of the Year, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, who else would there be? It would have to be DC to become the champ to defend that title, to defend light heavyweight. No one's really ever done that. No one's ever done that in 1 year in UFC history. No one has defended 2 belts in the same year, right? Is that not right? I mean, no one's done that. So am I forgetting someone?
No,
right?
I think you're right. It sucks because Dustin Poirier could have had a really interesting part of this discussion if that Nate Diaz fight hadn't fallen out, because then he's got Gaethje, Alvarez, and Diaz all in a very quick span, and that's a hell of a slate. But it feels like it's DC if he wins.
It's got to be DC. No one else stands out like that. No one else has that kind of resume. If you were to beat Derek Lewis, Cormier is far and away the Fighter of the Year, no doubt.
Which is wild because this is literally his last year in the sport. To be able to go out on top, be able to go out winning Fighter of the Year in your last full year in the sport.
He's in his prime. He's in his prime right now, man. He's better than he's ever been right now. I kind of hope he stays around for a little longer.
We'll see. What's next?
All right, from the Twitter. From Reap Fate. Considering Demetrius Johnson isn't going to get an immediate rematch, who is a credible flyweight contender? I don't believe winning a controversial split decision warrants a super fight.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the fight to make is Demetrius Johnson versus Henry Cejudo too. It is becoming increasingly unlikely that that's the fight they're going to make. It really feels like they're set on doing this TJ Dillashaw versus Henry Cejudo super fight. Which is unfortunate, and I guess maybe says something about how they feel about Demetrius Johnson
and the entire flyweight division.
If you're throwing Demetrius Johnson just back in the mix at 125, I guess you put him up against Formiga for the next title shot.
I mean, I guess so, but I don't know if there's going to be a 125 division in a few months. I really don't. It seems like they're going to move away from it. Nothing is official, but there are indications that they are kind of giving up. A lot of guys are moving up. Sergio Pettis has announced last week that he's moving up to 135. He's fighting in Milwaukee. So, yeah, I mean, if they were going to go ahead with it, certainly Demetrius Johnson. In the history of MMA, no one has deserved a rematch more than Demetrius Johnson. He has the most title defenses in UFC history.
And he lost a very, very controversial decision.
Yeah, that many thought that he won. So, yeah, I mean, no one has deserved more. We use the word, I mean, the deserve doesn't mean a damn thing, as we know, but that man really does deserve an immediate rematch. There's no doubt if that's what he wants. I think he's also a little bit injured. He's kind of getting you know, up to speed health wise. But yeah, it should be that. And yeah, if they go in the Cejudo Dillashaw direction and there is a 125 division in the next few months, I guess it would make sense against Formiga. Be really weird to see DJ in a non-title fight, man. We haven't seen that since what, 2012,
maybe
2011,
maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's very weird. It would be really weird.
3-round fight with Demetrius Johnson. Can you imagine?
Doesn't make sense. Doesn't seem right.
Yeah. Next up, this is coming from Peter KT95 on Twitter, who wants to know, John Kavanagh said recently that Gunnar Nelson will be fighting around the end of the year. Any idea who it could be against?
Whew. I have no idea.
Put on your matchmaker hat, Mark. If you're Sean Shelby out there or Mick Maynard and you're matchmaking for Gunnar Nelson, who's number 14 right now in that welterweight division.
Yeah.
He's coming back from a long injury layoff. Where are you throwing him?
I mean, it's hard to say. Is Matt Brown still fighting?
I mean, Matt Brown was going to fight Carlos Condit until he got hurt. I think he's going to be out for a while though with that ACL.
Yeah, I mean that could be interesting. Cowboy Oliveira could be interesting.
Jorge Masvidal's out there looking for a fight.
He certainly is. He certainly is. Although I think he was maybe saying back to 155. I mean, yeah, one of those guys. You know, Cowboy Oliveira is looking really good lately. Could be a fight if there's someone else.
Oh, I like that fight. Cowboy Oliveira versus Gunnar Nelson. I think that's my winner. That feels like a really nice fight.
And then if you want to like dip in deeper, like to some prospects, maybe like a Curtis Millender. See where Curtis Millender is at. Very exciting fighter. I mean, there's a few possibilities, I guess. I mean, how about Sergio Moraes? BJJ versus BJJ.
Capoeira dos Santos. That guy would be good too.
Oh, that guy is awesome. How underrated is that guy? He's so exciting.
Good options out there. Good options out there for.
I mean, at 170, there's never a shortage.
Yeah, there's not a bad fight out there. Next up, coming from
Vicente Luque, Danny Segura chiming in on my text.
In my opinion, he deserves a bigger fight than that. Almost, he's been on such a tear. And Gunnar
Luque is nasty. That guy's good.
No, I mean Luque deserves a bigger.
Yeah. Well, I mean he's coming off a win over a newcomer.
Yeah, but that was a short notice replacement. Like he's won so many in a row in such a ridiculous fashion. Like give him a top 10 opponent.
That guy is so underrated, man. Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah. Next up, coming from Ethan is Melky. All right. Don't know how I feel about that. What do you think is worse for Conor? A loss in a rematch to Diaz or a loss in a rematch to Khabib?
What is worse for Conor? Probably
Diaz. It's Diaz.
Yeah, probably Diaz, because as good as Nate Diaz is, he's not thought of as the best lightweight or welterweight in the world. Khabib Nurmagomedov is the best lightweight in the world, and losing to that guy is all right. I lost to the best guy, whereas Nate Diaz is not known as that. So yeah, I would say Diaz would be worse, certainly. The one bad thing about McGregor losing to Khabib for a second time, it's like, then where does he go from there? You know, what does he do if he loses 2 in a row? He's not fighting for. I mean, we don't think he's fighting for a lightweight title anytime soon. But then again, you never know.
You could say the same exact thing about losing to Diaz, though, man. And like losing to Khabib is one thing, like you said, and losing a second time to Khabib, I feel like people would expect that. If Conor loses to Nate in the third fight, especially if he gets finished or something like that, I feel like that reshapes his legacy once again in a very negative way. Because at that point, his biggest things that he's done is he knocked out Jose Aldo, and then he knocked out Eddie Alvarez, and then he lost his series with Nate Diaz, and he got utterly dominated by Khabib. That's a very conflicting legacy at that point. Right now, I feel like that him being tied 1-1 to Nate kind of lets people negate that original Nate Diaz loss. Because if he gets another one, that feels like a very big indictment on sort of the way he'll be remembered.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it is ultimately Diaz, but we'll see what happens. If maybe that fight happens next year, the trilogy fight. Moving on to the Twitter machine from Diana Zamora. can the UFC finally come to AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas after Conor's visit on Sunday and maybe have Conor versus Nate 3?
I mean, the UFC is certainly has been trying for a long time to get into AT&T Stadium. Have you ever been to Cowboy Stadium, Mark?
I have not. Have you?
Yeah, I went with a bunch of buddies to the Arizona Cardinals were playing the Cowboys there one year, and we went as like a big group trip. That is a crazy stadium to be inside, man. Like it is obscene how giant that thing is and cavernous that thing is once you're inside of it. And the video screen at the top, like whatever the mega giant screen is, it's very obscene. It's incredibly difficult to not just watch TV while you're there because you're just looking at this giant thing in front of you. A fight there would be madness. I can't even imagine what that would feel like to be there. But the UFC would really need like a Conor Khabib style mega blockbuster fight to be able to do that. And I don't know that Nate Diaz versus Conor is that at this point. Do you?
I mean, it could be. The question is really just they're going to make more money in Vegas.
Always.
Even as crazy as a spectacle that a stadium show in Dallas would be at Jerry World, they would make more money in Vegas because they can set the prices higher. There's no state tax in Nevada, which is a big deal. The casinos usually MGM pays them to go there. Plus they pick up all of hotel rooms, et cetera, et cetera. It's different working with casinos. There's a reason why casinos and T-Mobile is not a casino, but it's owned by MGM. So Vegas is still going to be more money. So that's why they always, I mean, all these big fights are in Vegas. I mean, all the big McGregor fights now have been in Vegas, except for MSG, which they wanted to make a big splash in New York for the first big show there. I don't think they'll do it. I mean, they could conceivably do it. They can do it really whenever they wanted to do it. I think that McGregor Diaz, McGregor Khabib too. I mean, those are all legitimate headline fights. You put a good co-main on there, and you know they'll sell out. I mean, if depending on the price point, but it's really just a matter of the UFC just wanting to go to Vegas, and it's also easier for the UFC logistically. They're in Vegas. All their people are in Vegas, so it's just the overhead is lower and the chance for profit is more. So that's why they just go to Vegas for all these big fights. Also,
not for nothing, but if you're taking something to AT&T Stadium, like I said, it's probably one of the biggest fights you've ever done. Do you want to put one of the biggest fights you've ever done in the hands of the Texas Department of Licensing Regulation? The Texas Commission is one of the worst in the entire country.
I mean, that's not anything
that anybody considers. That's just me talking. But I love Texas. I love going to Texas. It's one of my favorite places to go. But that commission is so god awful. I would never trust them to deal with an event like that.
Plus, it would just be more expensive for the UFC to. They would need probably more video screens. They would. I mean, you can't see the freaking fight, from way up there. You need more video screens. You probably need better audio.
Well, that one video screen would be more than enough for anybody. You underestimate how ridiculous this video screen is.
Perhaps I've never been there, but even so, the UFC, when they go to arenas, they still put video screens in all the corners. So these are things that would be more expensive. It's still cheaper to do Vegas, and there's a better chance of profit. I mean, so yeah, they can do whatever they want. They can do it. It's logistically possible. It's just they're trying to think about how much money they can make and revenue and profit wise. It's still T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah. All right, let's keep it going from Twitter questions. We're running out of time, but we probably got time for one or two more. This is coming from Ian McInerney, and I know I'm butchering that, and I'm so sorry. How many hardcore fans watch each pay-per-view, he writes? What explains the difference between a pay-per-view that sells 130K and one that sells 300K? Do you think fewer fans are actually watching, or are they watching it somewhere else?
It's a really good question. I think that the range of hardcore fans who watch just about everything kind of falls in that range, right? And then you have like maybe another few 100,000 who watch the FS1 cards because they're on cable, they're not pay-per-view. So it is hard to say, why like a Dillashaw versus Garbrandt card gets around 300,000 and then the Woodley Till card does worse than that, or Demetrius Johnson card does worse than that. I think that there are different levels even of hardcore fans. The ones who, all right, this is a good enough card where I'm going to shell out $65 for it because I'm a hardcore fight fan and it's a really deep card. I want to watch that. and that's like the 300,000 people. And then some of the cards where it's like, well, the main event don't really love it. The card is not that great. I'm gonna try to stream that illegally somewhere. I know that does happen, unfortunately. Yes, people do stream illegally all the time. And then you have the McGregor fights where it's like it's captured like the zeitgeist, it's captured like pop culture, and it gets 2.4 million or whatever that got. So it's like the low end of the spectrum is like 100,000 to 300,000. That's like the hardcore fans who watch almost everything. And then there's that's what I'm saying. There's so many more. Like people will complain about, well, why is McGregor gonna get a rematch? Because that's why. Because more people are gonna watch, a lot more, like millions more people are gonna be captured by Khabib McGregor 2 than they would Khabib Ferguson. I think Khabib Ferguson will do very well, but it won't get 2.4, 3 million pay-per-view buys.
I do think Khabib Ferguson would surprise people in how well it would do. Like I agree with you. I don't think it's not even coming close to 1 million, but I think Khabib is such a bigger star now than people realize.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm walking around town hearing people talk about Khabib Nurmagomedov, which is something I never ever imagined. That just walking into Starbucks or wherever I would hear that conversation. So I don't really have a lot to add. I think that Khabib Ferguson fight would probably hit around 500,000, which is a really good number for those guys.
Yeah, I can see that.
And just considering the stakes and everything. But the only other note I have to add is it feels like the baseline at this point for hardcore fans of how many hardcore fans are just going to are around and willing to consume all of this content is around 100,000. That feels about it. Because I mean, if you remember a few years ago when Bellator did their first pay-per-view, they got around 100,000.
Right.
That was a very hardcore fan type of card. They had a couple like bigger names from past days, but it was like if you're going to buy a Bellator pay-per-view, you're probably a hardcore fan. And then all these UFC pay-per-views, no matter how bad they are, they're hitting around 100, 120, 130. So it feels like that's kind of the baseline that we're at.
Yeah, totally agree. Want to do one more?
Yeah, let's do one more.
People are asking about Blake from Twitter is asking about where is the thrill and the agony for UFC 229. Usually they come out Tuesday after the fight. We also had a question about that in the MMA Fighting comments. My guess about this, Shaun, is that the tape they had to give that tape to the commission, I think. I mean, this is just speculation, but I know the commission has all of the video from that night. So that's probably why they haven't released that yet. That's just my guess.
Yeah, I don't actually have any inside info on that. I mean, it also could very possibly be that it's in Conor McGregor's contract that he gets to okay some of that footage. I don't know that that's a thing. I'm just throwing it out there. Obviously, I have no idea, but could be.
Yeah, I mean, also, it's not. It was a very different event and a very different aftermath than we've experienced before. So, the UFC might just be going through that video and seeing like, well, maybe we shouldn't show that. I mean, the issues like with the UFC producing their own shows, which they're going to continue to do in the future with ESPN, even is that like when that was live, they pull way back. And they didn't show anything that was really going on in detail. Whereas if like NBC or ABC or even maybe like an HBO or a Showtime, if they were producing that event, they would be they would do actual quote unquote journalism. They would like zoom in to see what the hell is going on. Whereas the UFC immediately, because the promoter is producing the show, you're not getting the gory details. You're getting however they want to manicure it for you. And that's the issue with, promotions like the UFC producing their own stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, this has been a lot of fun. Let's do the promo. And then we'll out of here. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
I'll go first. Mine is going to be very brief because I'm very sick.
Likewise.
And I think that we've pulled it together fairly well considering our conditions. All I wanted to say was it's been a long few weeks, and I know no one's crying for me, and I'm not asking for any kind of pity. But I went from New York. You're laughing, but I'm not. Just let me get to the point.
I just like where this is starting. That's all.
I know what pities me. I'm not asking for any pity. It's all good. This is we love to do this stuff, and we get paid for it, so it's all good. So I went from New York to San Jose to Las Vegas, back to New York for the last 4 weeks and change. I'm here now, back to Vegas tomorrow. God, I go to Vegas tomorrow, and then I'm in New York in a couple weeks. Anyway, through all of that, it was so awesome. And I want to say thank you to everyone for approaching us over the last few weeks on the road with well wishes, with compliments on the A side, with compliments on MMAfighting.com. People want to take selfies with us. I'm not sure why, but it's just really, it is really appreciated. It is so cool to have that kind of support from you guys. It really means everything. It is what keeps us all going, knowing that you guys are there, consuming everything that we do, and just being so positive about it. Say what you will about hashtag MMA fans, and there are some bad apples in the pick, but the experiences that I've had over the last 4 weeks have really been amazing. They really have, and I'm getting actually a little bit emotional about it, because it's really just been cool to meet all you guys. I've met people from all over the world who are fans of MMAfighting.com, who are fans of Shaun for some reason, who are fans of me and of the A side. And I just want to say thank you, because there were times in 4 weeks where you're working these crazy hours and you're just like, I want to let up, but that kind of support really makes us push through. And look, it has not been, you guys know how it goes. I mean, it has not been the easiest few months. We lost Ariel Helwani on MMAfighting.com. He is a force of nature. He's a supernova. He was the guy who really set the tone for the entire site. He was our face, and it has not been easy to replace him. But to hear all of the support and the positive attitudes from you guys has just been, it's just really been awesome. And it's like, I'm not like an emotional guy like that, but it's been really cool to hear that kind of support, and that you guys are behind us, and we're behind you too. So thank you so much to everyone who approached us and who wanted to take photos with us. Don't know why, but hey, we love you guys. Thank you.
Well said. Well said, sir. That was excellent. I want to echo what you said. I mean, I wasn't in New York, but I was in Vegas for 229, and I was genuinely surprised how many people came up to us and told us nice things about this show, this crappy show that we're trying to figure out along the way, and everything like that. All of the support is appreciated so much. Like we really, really do appreciate it as we try to pull this thing together.
You know who my favorite guy was, right?
Who was your favorite guy?
You remember?
I think I know where you're going, but who's
in
your
Vegas? You want to tell that story?
Are you talking about the guy who poked you in the chest?
What's that?
Are you talking about the guy who poked you in the chest?
No, the guy who interrupted our little gathering.
Which guy? Wait, I don't know. Tell the story, because I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Some guy like interrupted our little circle and was like, "Don't act like you ain't famous," and took a selfie with me.
Okay,
we love you guys.
That's what I was talking about. He came up and like poked you in the chest.
Oh, did he? I don't know. It was a long week.
Don't act like you ain't famous, Raimondi. That was great.
Fantastic. We love you guys.
Seriously, we really do. Thank you guys so much for the support. And so Marc said he was going to keep it brief, and he didn't at all. So I will keep it brief.
That's brief for me. That's brief for me.
That's very true. You're very verbose. So I'm going to keep mine super, super brief, because this has nothing to do with MMA. And I can barely think. My head is so fogged up with how sick I am. But this is one of my favorite days of the year. Nonetheless, as many of you guys know, I'm a huge sports fan in general. So it's a bit of a dream that I get to do this for a living. But pretty much any sport, I can get into it. I can have a conversation with you about. Like, I grew up reading sports almanacs. Every year, my mom would buy me the ESPN Sports Almanac, and I would just sit there reading stats all day, like in my bedroom, like a little kid nerd. That's just all I devoured that stuff, man. Football, baseball, hockey, soccer, whatever you name it, I can get into it to some degree. But other than MMA, there's nothing I love more in this world than basketball. There's my number one, always. And of course, as a lifelong Arizonan, the Phoenix Suns are my favorite team in basically all of sports. I say this because all of that is very unfortunate, because as you know, the Phoenix Suns have been very terrible for a long time, and that's an understatement to say they've been terrible. The past decade or so, we've basically been one of the worst teams in the league every year. And I know none of you guys care about this, and I can see the viewership dropping like crazy. But tonight is the Phoenix Suns home opener. It's basically the start of the season. I'll be there, so if you see me, say hello. I have no expectations for this year. We're going to be bad. Probably going to be really, really bad again. But there's a few glimmers of hope. I mean, DeAndre Ayton's looking like a monster, the number one pick. He's looking like a generational center. We finally have a real coach. Maybe Devin Booker can make the leap this year. So I don't ask for much, but I'm using this time just to ask for this year to please just be watchable. That's all. Just me putting it out in the world. I'm not asking for much. I don't want to be miserable for the next 6 months. Just please, sports gods, do me one favor. Just make this team like half watchable, just to give me a little taste. I just want a little taste, Marc. I don't need a lot. I just need a little taste of success. That's all. That's it. I don't ask for much. That's all I got.
Are you more excited for the Suns opener or PWG on Friday? You're coming.
Oh, man.
Coming to LA.
I am coming to LA on Friday for PWG. This is another thing that people don't care about. So it's going to be fun, though.
That's all right. Everyone already tuned out when you're talking about the Suns anyway, so might as well throw this in too.
Hey, that's fair.
I still got your shirt. I got your all-in shirt. I got to give it to you. I forgot when we were in Vegas.
Yes, please. I can't forget that.
Also, are we going to take some photos so that we can get a real logo for the A side or what?
We have a real logo.
I mean, with like our mugs and everything. People want to see our faces.
This is a conversation we have off air, Marc Raimondi.
Oh, are we still live?
Jesus Christ.
Oh, man. Sorry.
We should never do a show sick again. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up.
We should never do a show again.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for all the questions today and bearing with us. We really do appreciate it. And like Marc said, we really do appreciate all the support we've been getting over the past couple of months. We're still trying to figure out this thing out and pull it together. And you guys have really made us feel good about it. So in the meantime, this has been the A-Side Live Chat Podcast. We will be here same time, same place next week. Neither of us will be sick. We'll be full of energy, and it will be fun. We're looking forward to it. In the meantime, thank you so much once more for joining us. For Marc Raimondi, the man over there in LA, I am Shaun Al-Shatti. This has been the A-Side. You guys have a great week. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Later.